Good evening, America, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you today in the beautiful West Palm studios of Real America's Voice. I'm on travel today, so I'm visiting here. We're having a great show, a very big, historic day. Joe Biden has cemented his headline in history. He is the first sitting president to have a child convicted of a federal crime while he was in office. Hunter Biden convicted on 3 gun charges earlier today. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage on that. Including the message that President Trump and others want to deliver, which is this is a distraction. We'll get to that in a second. But also overnight, we broke a very big story here on Real America's Voice and Just the News. An FBI security clearance background check for a normal employee asked witnesses whether an FBI employee supported Donald Trump. That was the litmus test, on one of the litmus tests on whether that FBI employee would get their security clearance. The other litmus test: did they attend Second Amendment rallies? And did they express any skepticism about the COVID-19 vaccine? 3 questions, 3 opinions that are protected by the First Amendment. We're going to have a big segment in the middle of the show. In the middle of the show, the lawyers for that FBI employee, Tristan Levitt and Jason Foster, are going to join us to describe that, and also the fact there's likely to be a major investigation of it coming up in the next few days. But as we do always at this point in the show, let me turn things over to my amazing co-host, Amanda Head. She's in Los Angeles. She has a lot of headlines, including some additional news on Hunter Biden's really bad day. Hello, Amanda.
Hello. Yes, hello, John. We're both in Sunshine States. I'm going to start off with the Hunter Biden guilty verdict as well, because the narrative was already starting to be pushed the moment that verdict came out. So I'm going to leave it to ABC's congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott, to explain it to us.
This verdict certainly flies in the face of everything that the former president has been pushing, trying to undermine the legal and the justice system. And we know President Biden has come out very strongly against that. And it was notable that he told you just days ago that he would respect the outcome of this verdict regardless of what happens. We know that is something that the former president has not done after he was found guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records.
Straight down the middle reporting on that story, isn't it? Yeah, well, and this was the narrative on MSNBC earlier today as well.
And Joe Biden sat quietly and let the rule of law operate. And of course, there'll be no pardon here, which Joe Biden could do. He could pardon his son. So it is a real contrast between these two men and how they view what many would argue, and I would certainly argue, is the most important institution in our country, and that is the law applies to everybody. And it is fair, and it is done by jurors from the community who weigh the evidence, the facts that aren't political, just facts.
Oh, yeah, we saw it coming. This is the kind of thing that we are going to continue to get. The media and the Democrats are going to tell us that this is an example of the justice system working, and that nobody is above the law, and that President Trump is wrong when he says that he is being politically persecuted. So you won't hear them actually explain how these two cases are vastly different, how President Trump was charged with a completely made-up crime, a crime that still nobody can actually pinpoint. And Hunter Biden clearly broke the law when he lied on his gun purchase application by saying he did not use drugs. And they also won't tell you how the government was trying to sweep the whole thing, under the rug with a plea deal that would have let Hunter skate a deal that was tied to his other tax charges as well. So we will have much more on all of that tonight, John, especially with our first guest. He can tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong, but let me hand it back to you and we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I want to note something. Right after this verdict, like within a couple hours of the verdict, President Biden was out pitching his gun control agenda at an event, almost oblivious to the fact that his son actually violated the rules for that sort of gun control, those sort of laws. Pretty extraordinary, bad optics for Dad. I don't know who was in central planning at the White House, but it was so awkward for the moment. We're very lucky to be joined, as we always are, at the top of a big news day that involves the law, by our good friend, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, and the author of one of the most important books of last year, Get Trump. Professor, good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I don't think this is a surprise that he was found guilty. The evidence was pretty overwhelming. It was a pretty simple case. The jury didn't take much time. Your top line thoughts, not only about what happened here today, but its potential asterisk in history.
Well, I don't think he ever should have been tried for this case, even though he broke the law. People who make application errors, even deliberate ones, generally are not prosecuted independently. They're generally prosecuted when they use the gun to commit other crimes. It becomes a crime of aggravation. So although there are as your host said, between the Trump case, because there they just made up the crime, and here there's a crime on the book. Neither of them would have ever been prosecuted if their names were not Trump and Biden. And what I'm calling for today is a ceasefire. Look, we now have a tie. We now have Trump prosecuted and convicted. We have Biden prosecuted and convicted. We have Trump impeached. We have Mayorkas impeached. Let's call a ceasefire. Let's stop using the criminal justice system as a weapon for political purposes. And that's what we're seeing. It was the great Justice Jackson who said any prosecutor could rummage through the statute books and find something to get somebody. So it's not a question of the law. The law is not what's in the books. The law is as it's enforced. And so that's why I think Biden will get either a suspended sentence or probation, and Trump will as well, because the judges will realize that these are not cases that are generally prosecuted unless you have a name like Trump and Biden.
But Alan, Hunter Biden isn't running for office. Hunter Biden doesn't need to be on the campaign trail. Hunter Biden wasn't cooped up in a courtroom in New York when he needed to be out there during the primary process.
I agree with that. There are some differences. On the other hand, Hunter Biden would never have been prosecuted. Nobody ever looks at applications for guns. Nobody checks people to see whether they are addicted. What happens is after you've committed a crime with a gun, after you've assaulted a spouse or after you've robbed a bank, they then look and say, oh, my God, let's look at his application. So I don't think there would have been a prosecution here. And there was supposed to be a plea bargain. The plea bargain fell through because, frankly, these charges, the tax charge and the gun charge, are only the tip of the iceberg. The real problem with Hunter Biden is he paid fortunes of money for the misuse of his name and his influence. And he was terrified, and his lawyers were terrified. Maybe they would find something there, a very, very serious crime. And so they wanted to get complete immunity, and they couldn't get it, so the plea bargain fell through.
Yeah, and then now they have him as a convicted felon, at least on one charge. There is that tax charge in the September trial, and it's a significant charge. Yep. And the pattern laid out is, not just a couple of years of cheating on your taxes, but many years, some in the charges, some outside the statute, but showing a pattern of disregard for a very law that his father often says is important, that we all pay our fair share. Is that trial going to be a more difficult one for the Biden family politically as well as legally?
It will be, and that's why I think there'll be a plea bargain for that. I think both the prosecutor and the defense will say to themselves, look, we have a prosecution, we have a conviction, we have a sentence. Let's see if we can work something out for the tax case. If the tax case goes forward and he's convicted, that is a more serious case. And people are prosecuted for a tax evasion all the time. It's a little different than the gun laws.
Right. That's a good point.
Alan, in 1 month, we got 2 days of fireworks that will be set off. President Trump will have his sentencing, and then the next day, Matthew Colangelo, the lead attorney in President Trump's New York case, and the DA, Alvin Bragg, are set to go before the Judiciary Committee on Capitol Hill. What do you expect? First of all, do you expect the sentencing to have a bearing on what they ask them, and what do you think is going to come out of it?
Well, first, the sentencing is clear. He's not going to jail. He's going to get either a suspended 2 or 3 year sentence or probationary a sentence. There may be some conditions that are onerous to a political candidate. And I would hope that Bragg would come in for very, very hard questions. After all, his predecessor decided not to bring the charge. The federal government decided not to bring the charge. He decided not to bring the charge until he was pressured into doing it. He campaigned on the promise to investigate Trump. And I would hope that they would ask him very hard questions. I think the Bar Association ought to be questioning him as well. This was an abuse of prosecutorial discretion to make up this crime, to miraculously convert an expired misdemeanor into a viable felony by going into the mind of the defendant and saying possibly he intended to cheat on his taxes 2 years from now by taking as a deduction the expenses he paid for hush money. Look, never in history has anybody ever been prosecuted for failing to disclose the payment of hush money. Why would anybody ever disclose the payment of hush money if you had to make the payment of hush money if you had to disclose it? Obviously, it's the nature of hush money to disclose it.
Yes, you've made that case so well. Alan, I want to turn to something else. It's a story we broke last night before the verdict, but I think it has really significant implications. An FBI employee is going through a security clearance background check And the questions that are being asked of the witness are does he vocalize support for Donald Trump? Did he attend a Second Amendment rally? That, by the way, was a lawful rally. And did he ever express hesitancy to taking a COVID vaccine, which would seem to be a personal medical decision? The idea that the FBI used those on a form, they're typed onto the form, you can see the answers that they solicited to decide someone's security clearance. Are they skirting too close to the First Amendment here?
Oh, they're beyond that. They're clearly illegal. You can't ask questions like that consistent with the First Amendment and other provisions of the Constitution. No, I think it's clearly illegal. The question about, the vaccination, it depends on how the question is phrased and what the follow-ups are. But the other two, my God, attending what's the difference between the Second Amendment and the First Amendment? What if they said you can't attend, you can't go to church? That's an exercise of First Amendment rights. No, you can't get into that kind of thing for security clearance. And I would think that once you expose that, and you always do such a masterful job of exposing, you are a check and balance. You are the fourth branch of government. You do more to check and balance the abuses of government sometimes than the legislative branch does. So I think once this is exposed and made public, they're going to have to change it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Alan, I want to shift gears to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland. He's been subpoenaed twice, and now I think it made it out of the Rules Committee to hold him in contempt. But he wrote an op-ed where he called criticism of the DOJ dangerous, and it just kind of seems to me like it's the most American thing to question and ridicule, I suppose, if it's warranted, the governing body that is supposed to disseminate justice.
Of course. Look, I have been trying to promote justice in America for 60 years. And the way I do it is to attack the Justice Department, to attack attorney generals, to attack district attorneys, to attack judges. My first book, The Best Defense, I had a chapter, black robes, white lies. I went after everybody. That's as American as apple pie. That's, again, part of our system of checks and balances, to have academics and people who know a lot about how the Justice Department operates and criticize them. There may be limits when you go after people's families, and that cuts both ways, by the way. You get people going after Senator Alito's wife and Justice Alito's wife and Justice Thomas's wife, and you have people going after the daughter of a judge, and both are within the ambit of the First Amendment. And so, no, the Attorney General ought not to be in any way condemning appropriate criticism of any department of the United States government.
Alan, I want to ask one last question. We'll bump the break here just a little bit. If the Justice Department applies the standard that it applied to Steve Bannon and to Peter Navarro for contempt of Congress, what should happen to Merrick Garland if he refuses to turn over the audio tape of the Joe Biden interview?
Well, it won't happen, but he should be treated exactly the same way. Bannon should not have to go to jail. Then nobody should go to jail on an issue like this, pending the complete outcome of all the appellate process. What are they afraid he's going to do? Run away? Where do you go to get your time and reverse the conviction? In every one of these cases, there must be a stay until after all appellate remedies are completely and totally exhausted.
Yeah, that's clearly what I think most Americans would expect. But this justice system has confounded us the last few years. Alan, we are always so grateful for your time. You call balls and strikes like you see them. We're so lucky. Folks, go get that book, Get Trump. I read it often. It reminds me of exactly the problems that we're talking about here today. Professor Dershowitz, always great to have you on. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett is going to be here. He has a lot to say about what happened today and all week. Been a very busy week in Congress already. We'll have him right after.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Amanda Head, coming to you from our Los Angeles studio. I am joined by my incredible co-host and Just the News editor-in-chief, John Solomon. Now, the fallout from the Hunter Biden guilty verdict continues. Is this a moment where we will finally see some accountability in America? Well, we are going to at least have to see until sentencing happens to get a relatively definitive answer on that particular case. But there are other problems that stem from the Biden family's corruption that have yet to be addressed. Now, remember, for example, all of those news reports by people from the intelligence community claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was all Russian disinformation. Well, here's a refresher if you don't remember.
This is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work.
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son.
I think there are a lot of issues related to this New York Post story that reportedly referenced Hunter Biden emails. And as I and several of my former colleagues have pointed out publicly, that it does bear the hallmarks of Russian disinformation.
So, will we be seeing any accountability for those falsehoods? I imagine that some, if not all of them, knew that it was a lie when they said it. But with John and I now to discuss that and much more, Congressman from Tennessee, Tim Burchett, thank you so much for being here, Congressman.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, John, for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, good to have you on.
It is our honor, sir, and I do want to get into your resolution regarding those 51 intelligence officials, but I want to start with the news of the day. Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 counts. That means that the justice system works. There's no weaponization. There's no persecution of President Trump. All is good, right, sir?
Well, the jury was out about 30 seconds, it seemed like. I don't know, it was about like a commercial break during the January 6th or something. But the reality is you know, it's got the proof's in the pudding. What are they going to do? They're going to throw the book at him, or they're going to slap his wrist? He committed a felony, and they keep saying, well, this proves to you the judicial system works. Well, no, it really doesn't. President Trump, the statute of limitations had run. It was a misdemeanor that they moved up to a felony. You know, it was a bookkeeping error. Despite all the salacious details, which are awful. I mean, you know, it's not. I don't want him to teach my Baptist Sunday school class. I want him to be my president. but still, it had nothing to do with any of that. It was a bookkeeping error while he was president. And so now you're seeing all the left is running. Oh, this is exactly what we said. This is what will happen. Let's see what the punishment is, and let's see how long standing it will be.
Yeah. I want to talk about punishment for a second, because when I got my copy of the Hunter Biden laptop around the time that Miranda did, we both did due diligence on it, right? We went to the FBI. They said it was legitimate. We had an FBI expert look at the handwriting, said that's Hunter Biden's handwriting. We talked to his business partners. They figured out it was their emails. Those were their legitimate emails. It was not hard to authenticate the laptop and know that it wasn't Russian disinformation. But 51 men, because they were all men, I believe, if I remember correctly, all signed a letter saying that it must be Russian disinformation. Had they made just one call, it wouldn't have been true. What consequences should happen? I know you've been thinking about creating consequences for them.
Yeah, I've written a letter to Chairman Comer. It's causing quite a stir, apparently, because these folks are never called to question. You know, I've often said these intelligence agents are like congressional ethics. I wonder if they actually exist, because what you're seeing is just the classic groupthink. It's, oh, well, my colleagues think this, and it's obvious that's the case, you know, and these arrogance. The Bible talks about, you know, professing yourself to be wise, you became a fool. And that's exactly what they've done. And at some point, you got to have some accountability in this dadgum country. Yeah, I know the soccer leagues, everybody gets a dadgum trophy, but these intelligent folks, you know, we rely on them for things, and people can lose their lives because of what the stuff they're spewing out. And at some point, somebody's got to hold them accountable. I would like to know the chain of command. I would like to know who each and every one of them talked to. I would like to know what notes they were looking at. I'd like to know who had their ear during all of this, and if they actually viewed the laptop, or if it was just they just caught them on the cuff and they all were in a group chat and decided to do this. Yeah. Because this is a serious matter that was used for election interference. And this is clearly another case of that, and it's happened time and time again. But this time, you know, it's the deep state, it's the big boys, and they need to be called into question.
Yeah.
That's right. Sir, I think that it was clear that at least some of those 51 intel officials had at least Law 101, because you could tell by their statements that they were trying to have plausible deniability. You know, it has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. But lest we forget that they just signed off on this. Someone else authored and coordinated this. And I think of the person who gathered this gaggle was former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morrell. Should he be held responsible in this as well?
I think so. I mean, if you're talking about an official government document or anything that has been purported to be that. I think he needs to. I assume there's some laws been broken, but if anything, the American public has a right to know. They keep saying, people say, Burchett, you need to quit having these hearings. Well, that's what we're supposed to do. When the Democrats were in charge of this committee, they met for months on whether to name the Washington Redskins or not. This is serious matters. This is what this committee is supposed to do. Chairman Comer has done a good job of it. Him and Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee have both taken a bite off this apple many times. I think this, though, is at the point of the spear. This is the deep state. This is the ruling class. These are the people that our mothers warned us about, and we need to call them into question, ma'am.
Sir, we got about a minute left. The consequences, I want to just lay out a couple for you. Pulling their security clearance so they can't make money, passing a rule or law that says they can't ever enter government again. Are those on the table?
100%. 100%. The problem you've got is the Republican Party, I'm afraid, doesn't have enough guts to do anything about it. They're gonna holler for a little bit and hope it goes away. I hope the American public calls their congressmen and senators and say, enough of this. I don't care what party you're in. These are our intelligence community. They're supposed to be better than this, supposed to be above reproach, and they are obviously in the political mud in this one.
Yeah, and out of politics. That's something that I think you captured so eloquently in your letter. Sir, it's always a great honor to have you on the show. We always call things like you see them today. I think this letter has really got a great conversation going on in Washington. A great honor to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Amanda. Y'all are awesome. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. You a firearms owner? Do you think that you could live with yourself if your gun was used to injure or kill someone? The responsibility for ensuring that no one is injured with your firearm is paramount, and it's your responsibility. And there are a variety of tools on the market that are designed to help you be a safe gun owner when it comes to when your gun is out of the safe. You all know this. We're all big Second Amendment fans here. One of my favorite solutions, the muzzle stick, chamber, and barrel flags. Muzzle stick, chamber, and barrel flags offer a way for anyone, whether they handle firearms or not, to quickly see the loaded or unloaded status of a firearm, which could save lives. By the way, 1/3 of all firearms injuries are unintentional, which likely means that the firearm was handled by someone who didn't have appropriate firearms training. And a high percentage of these injuries and deaths occur with children. This is completely preventable. I know all of us who are Second Amendment fans want to do that. Now, first, you can always lock up your gun, but sometimes there's a reason to keep it out of the safe. So if it doesn't make sense to have it in the safe, take as many precautions as you can, like clearly letting everyone see that the status of your gun. Is it loaded or is it not? The barrel flag does that. The chamber flag does that. Just in time for Father's Day, in honor of firearms owning dads, Muzzle Stick is offering 15% off all of its products. Use the code RANGEDAD and head over to muzzlestick.com today to place an order for yourself or for your dad. After all, we only have one life to live. Let's take one extra step to save one and also get a great gift from Dad this holiday. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we broke a big story last night. The FBI's litmus test. They're asking Donald Trump questions when doing security background checks. We're going to have that right after these messages. Welcome back, America. At the top of the show, we told you about these brand new and explosive documents showing that an FBI security review of one of its employees actually asked questions like, did the employee vocalize support for Donald Trump? Did he vocalize hesitancy for vaccines? Did he support the Second Amendment or go to a Second Amendment supporting event? Extraordinary political litmus questions that I think most people in America say have no business in the back of an FBI security review. Joining us now are the two men representing that FBI employee. They are, you know them quite well because they've represented some of the most important whistleblowers of the last couple of years. They're from the Empower Oversight Center. Tristan Levitt and Jason Foster join us now. Gentlemen, good to be with you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So if you ever told me there'd be a day where you'd see an FBI security clearance form and it was asking questions like who your presidential preference was, I'd say, that's for the movies. Tristan, this is real stuff and scary stuff, right?
It is, because the FBI has no business in this. If this were, if the shoe were on the other foot and this were the FBI asking questions like, did you support, vocalize support for President Biden? And keep in mind, this is our client, it's his coworkers who are being told, you have to answer this or your security clearance could be in question. So to be asked questions like, again, there on the screen, vocalize objections to the COVID-19 vaccine. This is none of their business. And again, if it were questions like, did they ever vocalize support for abortion? I think, the other half of America would be outraged by that.
Yeah.
a question about whether this is endemic or not, because John and I talk all the time about how personnel is policy. And it seems to me that if you are conducting hundreds of security clearances every year, you've got to have more than one person conducting these screenings and these interviews. If it's one person, maybe it's rogue, but if it's more than one person, it seems like it's policy, whether official or not. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, we know from these documents that the questions were asked of at least 3 witnesses in our client's case. But our client has made a protected disclosure to the DOJ Inspector General that about his reasonable belief that these documents point to the fact that there's likely this occurred in many other cases as well. And it appears to be a clear, First Amendment violation. You can't be conditioning someone's pay and their employment on whether they support or oppose the current president, or support or oppose, a certain healthcare policy or something like that. So it's likely that there are other examples of this in other cases, and that's why we're referring it to the Inspector General, so that there can be a comprehensive review. And Congress needs to hold the Inspector General's feet to the fire to make sure that there's a timely and comprehensive review of this.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. And by the way, I've talked to several people that say that this is more extensive than just this case, at least questions similar or information similar being gathered. So we're going to keep digging into that. Both you gentlemen had security clearances. You worked on this in the Senate for a long time, overseeing the FBI, the Justice Department. Jason, I want to ask you this question. Is there any scenario where knowing a person's presidential preference or knowing their opinion on vaccines actually better protects the national security that a classified security clearance would give them?
No, it's a completely irrelevant question to ask. I mean, look, it's legitimate for the FBI to investigate whether or not someone, was advocating for violence on January 6th, or involved in violence on January 6th, or violated the law. All those things are completely legitimate inquiries. We're not suggesting they're not. But digging for information, forcing your coworkers to rat you out if you are a supporter of a particular presidential candidate or a president, and especially to talk about your views about the vaccine, when that has nothing to do with a legitimate inquiry about January 6th, as we said in our letter, it's a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Tristan, I don't know a single FBI agent, present or former, who has ever allowed his or her politics to get in the way of doing their job. But it seems to me that the FBI could possibly be at risk of losing diversity of thought, because agents are humans. Everybody has their own personal beliefs and opinions about things, even if they don't express it on the job. What are the dangers of having an agency like the FBI where the diversity of thought just really doesn't exist?
I think there's 3 issues that come to mind. One is that the FBI, of course, in the last several years has gotten so many black eyes over its employees allowing their political bias to impact what they do. And that's bad. It's bad for everyday Americans. It's bad for the Bureau. It's bad for the work that they do. I think a second thing that's so ironic about it is the Bureau is, in this instance, going after employees, asking them questions. They're asking, the whole idea that they're trying to get at is, are these employees politicizing the process? When it's the Bureau itself that is politicizing. My background is working with federal employees. Part of what I worked at the agency that enforces the Hatch Act. And the whole idea of creating a neutral civil service was that you take politics out. You take litmus tests, you take loyalty tests out of the federal workforce. In this case, ironically, in their claim that they were, going after political bias by people, they were introducing it here. And so that's just extremely problematic. And to your point, what happens then if if they did purge the FBI of a number of the conservatives, where does that leave you? It leaves you, like you say, with a workforce that doesn't have diversity of thought, that views things in a very different way than a very large segment of the country. And these are the armed law enforcement officials that are coming into a lot of situations. And so to not have them able to relate to about half the country is really problematic and potentially very dangerous in a lot of situations.
Yeah. Your letter, Tristan, makes reference to an earlier U.S. Supreme Court that said you can't have a political litmus test for public employees. I think that comes out of maybe some patronage cases from earlier years. But the court's already been clear that testing someone's politics as a condition of employment or the tools for their employment is not appropriate under the First Amendment, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, federal employees are Americans too, and all of us under the Constitution have a right to be able to have personal opinions and political opinions, and to try and do otherwise for federal employees runs afoul of the Constitution, and again, in an agency that is particularly important, the FBI.
Yeah. Point.
It's terrifying. Jason, I know that both you and Tristan have a passion for whistleblowing, and it's been wonderful to work with you guys over the years and have these conversations with you. As much as I wish that corruption didn't exist and that whistleblowing isn't necessary, I kind of feel like it's become even more lucrative foreign power oversight. I do believe that courage is contagious, so hopefully there are more people blowing the whistle. Has it become a bit of a deluge for you guys?
Yes, there is more to come. We are we are continuing to speak with people and get new clients and learn more, because that is what tends to happen in this space. You know, once people there's sort of safety in numbers. Once people see that other people are speaking up and telling the truth, you know, that has a self-reinforcing power, and it gives other people the notion that they can come forward. And you know, some people are. Some people are retired or recently retired or eligible for retirement, and just make they decide to make that choice that, you know what, disclosing this is actually more important than me keeping my job and getting one more year in my retirement, calculation, and I just can't do this anymore. And so, they come forward. Other people want to come forward and stay anonymous, like this particular client. And we're working with them either way, and there's going to be more disclosures to the OIG and to Congress along these lines about what appears to be a rot inside the security division at the FBI that is, propagating these kinds of completely inappropriate political questions and priorities as part of their, security clearance process.
It's just extraordinary. Jason, your letter lays out a pretty good timetable. Now, I want to just make sure, beyond the political First Amendment issues that you're asking someone about their Second Amendment support, their presidential Trump support, there is also a timeline that this particular employee made not one, but two protected disclosures, one to Congress, or some to Congress, some to the Inspector General, before his security clearance was revoked. This looks something similar to like what we saw in the Marcus Allen case and other places. Are whistleblowers just simply being retaliated against because they're following the whistleblowing law?
Well, here it's sort of the opposite. It's sort of the reverse. In fact, the client made a comment once about, I'm kind of a reverse whistleblower. They were targeted for other reasons, right, for the political beliefs. Then once that occurred and he suffered the consequence of having the security clearance suspended, was put in that limbo, had the paycheck taken away, and then eventually decided to retire early, when they revoked the clearance. It's after that all occurred that he then made protected disclosures about the politicization of the security clearance process to the House and to, through us to the Inspector General.
Wow.
Tristan, when I consider future implications of something like this enduring, there's a terrifying reality, and I look at that with respect to what has happened with the 45th president and his felony conviction, and Democrats' effort to not deliver security briefings for him upon the time at which that they would normally deliver those to the major presidential candidates. Does it seem to you that we could end up, if this continues barreling down this road, that we end up with a situation where it's only one side of the aisle with security clearances, so they're the only ones who are pulling the strings with that?
That would be the worst case scenario. Obviously, our hope is that by bringing these concerns forward, that there is able to be reform, that changes can happen. So some of those need to be personnel changes, clearly. The House Weaponization Committee has been looking at and interviewing leaders within the FBI that had responsibility for security clearances. But it's clear there are further reforms that need to take place. And so, I can't imagine that we would get to a point, having brought this forward now, where we allow this to fester. There needs to be major reforms of the FBI. There needs to be accountability for people that did this and allowed this to happen. And then we need to be able to get to a stage where, if there are legislative changes that need to fix the security clearance process or protect whistleblowers more, that we're able to do that.
Very important. Jason, we just got about 30 seconds left. I just want to ask quickly, HIPAA, asking someone whether they're vaccinated, or asking them, if you switch the table and say if they had an abortion, is it the business of a security clearance review to address medical issues?
No, of course not. It's no more their business to address medical issues as it is to look at your political preferences. That doesn't raise a serious or legitimate security concern. To the extent that there was a vaccine mandate at one point that was being implemented and there were rules, our client followed the rules. He tested and he masked and he did the things that he was supposed to do.
Yeah, in fact, that's clear in the documents. The FBI knew that he was following the rules. Gentlemen, once again, your work has made the American people wiser about something that was actually under a rock. We wouldn't know what to do without the Empower Oversight Center. Thanks for joining us today for this very big revelation. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey folks, this month we celebrate Father's Day. I'm reminded of my own dad. He was a man of strong values. We went to church, had family dinners, and honored the flag. These values shaped our home. My dad taught me to stand up for my beliefs, cherish the loved ones in our lives, and appreciate our freedoms. This Father's Day, I found a perfect way to honor his legacy with an AMAC membership. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, champions the values that my father instilled in me: faith, family, and freedom. AMAC.us/no noise is the place to get started when you want to join. By joining AMAC, you support an organization that fights for these principles. For June only, you get a 2-year membership for just $16, 2 years for the price of one. What a good deal. Join me and thousands of others proud to be AMAC members. Visit amac.us/no noise. Let's celebrate Father's Day by standing up for what our... Welcome back, America. The other day, my son and I were taking a road trip. We stopped at, don't tell my wife this, but we stopped at the grocery store. We picked up a candy bar. And it's one of those ones you break up. He takes a piece, I take a piece. He took a piece, I took a piece. We split it up. And I was thinking, this would be pretty cool if you could do that with a gold bar. And guess what? Our great partners at Genesis Gold Group have created just that, a prepper bar, one of the hottest new products in the gold and silver market. Joining us right now, the CEO of the Genesis Gold Group, our good friend, Jonathan Rose. Jonathan, good to have you back on the show.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Thank you, John and Amanda.
This is pretty innovative. I've been seeing a lot of traffic on the internet and on social media. People very excited about the Prepper Bar. Tell us what it is, show us what it is, and also what was the inspiration for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to think that I was actually smart enough to come up with this myself, but that's not the case. But what we do is we listen to a lot of our clients, and a lot of our clients, we have thousands of them who protect their IRAs or 401ks with physical gold. They may purchase items like this. This is a kilo of gold, and you can obviously get this in silver too. But a lot of questions would always arise where people would say, well, I can't carry this in my back pocket, or if I had a hacksaw, how do I cut this up into a multitude of pieces, and how can I spend it? How can I use it? So people have often over the years have been asking me for something that's tradable, portable, something that's divisible. And that's really where we kind of gave birth to the prepperbar.com. And I'm going to hold it up to the camera here. It's the only bar of its type that's actually made and minted in America. And if you see it here, I'm going to put it at an angle because it really has a reflective light to it. This is a silver one, and it also comes with gold. It says, "In God we trust." The top row is a 20th of an ounce breakable pieces, a 1/4 of an ounce in the middle, and 1/10 of an ounce at the very bottom. And what I do is, I keep it in my wallet. And it's something I can pull out. I call it portable wealth, or wealth in your wallet. And again, it's the only bar like this that's made in the USA. It's about 62 grams, just over. And you can see they're all perforated pieces. So just like you mentioned, like a Kit Kat or a chocolate Hershey's bar, they're also sovereignized, which basically means it's a kind of a big deal because you can put these in an IRA or a 401k. So again, they come in gold or silver, and it's almost like innovation meets legacy, John, because people have often, understood the value and why you want to hold on to gold. But now we're really kind of answering that question of how you can use it, how you can have tradable, portable wealth. And the fact that you can, again, have this in your wallet. If anything bad happens, you can pull it out. If you wanted to barter with it or an emergency comes up, you now have this utility aspect to gold and silver where it can't just, stay in a vault backing up your IRA, but you can hold on to it. And in the worst, what case situations, you now have gold and silver that you can barter, trade, and use. Hopefully you don't need to use it because you can obviously liquidate it. It's gold and silver, but it's adding that extra layer of utility. And people absolutely love it. So I'm just very proud that people can go to prepperbar.com and learn a little bit more about this fascinating product.
I think this is so cool. Although I would caution you in holding up a gold bar because Jersey Bob might try to triangulate your location and come running. So it looks like it's about the size of a credit card, so it could fit in your wallet. Is that about the size? How thick is it?
Yeah, look, I'm going to turn it to say, yeah, so it's just slightly bigger than a credit card. And if you have a wallet, like I mentioned, here's my wallet here, and it just slots in this pouch. And you don't have to keep it in your wallet, but I like to have it with me. And it's just, a very cool, and it's very unique. There's nothing like it on the market. Obviously, these make even great presents. Father's Day is coming up. I'm sure lots of fathers would like this. And it's just very, very unique. There's nothing like this on the market. It's IRA eligible, but more importantly, people just want to have one of these in case of an emergency. People talk about cashless societies. They talk about central bank digital currencies and government overreach. And obviously, I'm not saying that the US dollar is going to become obsolete, but it definitely makes sense to prepare. And when people hedge against, uncertainty, inflation, what's happening here domestically with all the debt that the country is in, and even when you look at international conflicts we're having in the Middle East, Russia and Ukraine, and you look at the forecast for precious metals, the forecast looks very good. Now, does that mean the economy is also going to kind of fall off of a cliff? Well, let's hope not, but a prudent man foresees danger and prepares. And I often say we don't have a crystal ball, but we have a pretty good roadmap. And when you have people like Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve come out and say, folks, expect to see more bank failures this year, people have to pay attention. You can't be like an ostrich and bury your head in the sand. We like to kind of educate people, and that's essentially what we do at Genesis Gold Group is we help people protect, retirement accounts and move a percentage of that over into precious metals. But when people go to prepperbar.com, they can literally, buy these types of assets, and whether you're keeping it, you're safe at home or keeping it in your wallet, it's just beautiful that you can now have an innovative product that people want that actually has a use case factor to it. And I think that's what makes it so exciting to have a product like this on the market.
Well, I got to tell you, next Christmas family party this December, I'm getting one of these, and instead of giving people gift cards, I'm just going to break off a tenth of a piece of gold and give it to each one. That'd be a really cool, that'd be a big hit. That'd be great. Jonathan, as always, we love having you on. It's such a great honor. Folks, go to Genesis Gold Group today and check out all the options. The first way to do that is to call 800-279-GOLD, 800-279-GOLD. You can also find out more about their Prepper Bar by going to prepperbar.com. I'm going to tweet that out so you have it later tonight. Go check those out. Jonathan, great innovation. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, a lot to wrap up from a very consequential day in politics of all. We'll have that right after these messages.
Welcome back, America. It's the final segment, so let's pick apart some of the things that we discussed. Although I do want to throw in a wild card, John. I am very saddened by this news. Joey Chestnut, the 16-time Nathan's hot dog eating contest, who we've had on this show. Yeah, we had him for our 4th of July special, I think the last 2 years. Anyway, he's gone because he brokered a deal with Impossible Foods, who came out with a vegan hot dog. I can't imagine shoving down hundreds of those like he does the Nathan's hot dogs. But anyway, sad news.
Yeah, listen, what an icon. I have a funny feeling he's got a bigger play here. Maybe there's going to be a brand new hot dog competition down the road. But wow, what a moment. A little light humor on a day when we've had a lot of heavy news. But Joey Chestnut, an icon. I can't imagine spending 4th of July without wondering how many he wolfed down. So it's going to be a difficult year for us, isn't it?
If he tries to create some type of competition for Nathan's hot dogs, it better not be a vegan hot dog eating contest, because that is the most un-American thing I have ever heard of.
I don't think I could eat a vegan dog. No way. I'll tell you what, one of the things that some people have been eating this week is a lot of crow, like those 51 intelligence experts. I'll put those in quotes. You did such a good job at the opening of the show to play that sizzle reel where you see the really disingenuous way that people with intelligence trainings, they got their skills from us, the American people. We paid for their training, right? They went into government. The way they used the subterfuge of intelligence world to mislead the American people before an election. Our own intelligence community interfered in our own election in 2020. It is so clear. That FBI agent, when she uttered the words, yep, the laptop was real, and we knew it. it called out all 51 of those colleagues. And no matter how many times they say, I stand by my words, they use their credentials to mislead the American people. And it was kind of fun today to talk to Congressman Tim Burchett about some of the consequences he's considering. Pulling their security clearances so that they can never make money off of that again, declaring that they can never hold a job in federal government again. It'll be interesting to see if Republicans have the courage to do anything. Because listen, even Democrats I talked to are like, man, that was really bad. I mean, they shouldn't have done that. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Republicans need to make the next move and try to create a consequence. Let's see if people jump on the Burchett wagon or not.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, I remember back in 2020, breathless coverage that laptop was Russian disinformation. Fast forward however many years to the present time. And when that laptop was introduced as evidence in that trial, and the FBI agent, Erica, the last name, anyway, the witness in the trial brought it forth. I mean, basically endorsing it as true evidence. You didn't hear a peep from mainstream media. But you're right. I mean, access is practically the most lucrative aspect of any job in Washington, and you pull that security clearance and they can no longer take their intel to private organizations, and you pull the rug out from under them financially. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think another important theme, and I heard it all throughout the day today, starting with former President Donald Trump. Today's a gun case conviction. All right, good. The state clearly broke the law, as the jury decided. But it's a distraction from the bigger thing. The Bidens want the story to end here, but the size of the influence peddling as we dig further and further in here at Real America's Voice at Just the News, it keeps getting bigger. And I just want to tease something. Everybody put a circle around Monday on your calendar, okay? We're going to break a new story here on the show Monday night. It's going to be the largest of all of the deals that Hunter Biden was trying to broker in overseas. It's a very big number, astronomically larger than any number we've ever talked about. Yes, it involves Ukraine, so buckle your seatbelt. We're going to have a lot of documents we're going to show you. Amanda, those 33 million plus 3.39 million pages of documents have all sorts of secrets we didn't know, things that were not on the laptop, but we're going to bring some of those to the truth tomorrow. The real question, though, is can Republicans create any consequence? Every time I ask a Republican, what's your play? I don't get a very clear answer.
No. Well, and I must say, just to bolster your tease, the money that we've been talking about with respect to the Bidens is pocket change compared to what John is going to bring forth on Monday. And I will reinforce, circle it on your calendar. John, the jobs report came out, 272,000 jobs. They said that it blew away expectations. That's so great. I'm just trying to understand why the American people don't feel like that's true, because here in California, since April 1st, just a few months, we've lost 10,000 fast food jobs, and that's just here in California. But there was also a report that came out by the Center for Immigration Study, I think it was published by Stephen Camarata, that found that 75% of new jobs added to the economy since late 2019 are attributed to immigrants, both legal and illegal. But that's not Americans getting jobs. Those are immigrants getting jobs. That doesn't sound like it's too great for us.
Yeah, unless you're a lawful immigrant. If you're lawful, of course you're an American. But otherwise, you're right. No, you're right. Listen, this whole economy, it's when you start looking into the data, you're realizing particularly recent immigrants who got their citizenship recently, they're as angry about the border as people who have had 4 or 5 generations of Americans here. Why? Because they all know what's happening. Good jobs are being taken away and taken out of play. And here's another thing: if this was such a rosy report, why did the unemployment rate go up to 4%? And why have all of the job numbers for the last year, about a month or two after they come out, they all go down, right? So employment rate goes up. These numbers will get revised down like all the others. And Joe Biden thinks that's a good thing. I think most Americans are smarter. They're going to call his bluff.
Americans are not stupid. I went to my dry cleaner yesterday. He is a legal immigrant from Iran, and he was talking about the jobs report, and he's like, those aren't real jobs. Any of these jobs from Joe Biden and the jobs that they are touting are just refilling from COVID. He knows exactly what's going on, and I think that all Americans do as well, and I hope that they take that knowledge and that wisdom into the polls in November. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here with John and I tonight. That's it for us. Grant Stinchfield is going to take you through the next hour, and we will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern right here.